Hello, this is I Go Travel with Don Barnett again. We're on the road heading north from Phoenix. We've taken a look at Sedona, and we're going to get on the road and end up at the Grand Canyon on the next trip. So come along, let's go. This travelogue is part 3 of a 3-part series that I've made over several days of travel on a scenic alternate highway route between Phoenix and the Grand Canyon. We are leaving Sedona, going north on the narrow 2-lane road from Sedona on the way to the Grand Canyon. And there's sometimes not much room for passing or parking. You just have to be careful. This is a very steep, high elevation place. Look at the levels of road in the top right, and then down in the middle and in the bottom here. This is a very steep climb. As high as Sedona is, the Grand Canyon is even higher. So we're gaining elevation, and we should be up into the Grand Canyon country pretty soon. There's a number of views of the Grand Canyon from the south rim, the most tourist area of the canyon. But you can see it is one massive deep canyon, really carved out of a fairly level plateau up on the top on both sides. But here's another perspective. The white stuff, by the way, that's snow. We were here in about February. This sketch map shows the road areas around the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is up at the top of the map, and it is north of the main Interstate I-40 that runs east-west across northern Arizona. And once you get to the communities, small cities of either Williams or Flagstaff, you are only about an hour drive from the Grand Canyon. And if you drive north for about an hour from Williams, or from Williams you can take the train for about twice that long, a little over 2 hours. And the train will also run you up to the visitor center on the west end. And there's a 2-lane road across the rim of the canyon running east-west, and that's about a 35-kilometer distance, and you could drive it in 20 or 25 minutes without much traffic. However, you will be pulling off that road all the time to look at viewpoints along the edge of the canyon. And on the east end, about 35 kilometers from the visitor center, is a tower, and we'll show you a picture of that. And a lot of people will either come from Las Vegas or Los Angeles, down in the lower left-hand corner here on the Interstate 40, and either come to Williams or Flagstaff, like I said, and kind of do the big square up to the canyon and back again. And Highway 180 is a more scenic road that angles back toward Flagstaff. The most popular view of the canyon is from the south rim. Here in the top left-hand corner, you can see people crowded overlooking the beautiful array of colors in the canyon. And they're near the visitor center. This observation tower is 35 kilometers away near the east gate. You can climb to the top of it, and it's quite a nice view, although you can really see almost everything there is to see when you're just standing along the rim of the canyon. You often see people selling souvenirs along the highway. These tourist shops were closed when we drove by because it was during the slow tourist season of midwinter. The 2,300-kilometer Colorado River originated in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado and has carved out the Grand Canyon on its way through to Yuma, Arizona, and on to the Sea of Cortez at its mouth in Mexico. This sketch map shows you the road between the visitor center on the west side and the observation tower near the east gate of the national park. And the roadways in yellow, they show how you can go along that two-lane roadway, east-west, and pull off and look at various viewpoints. And there's probably from maybe close to a dozen viewpoints, more than what I show on this map here. And you drive up to the edge and you look down over the cliffs of the canyon, and at some of the viewpoints you'll get a little glimpse of the Colorado River many meters below you. There is an information sign near the East Gate that tells of a horrific aircraft disaster that shook the country. It was in the 1950s. Air flight was on the increase. Skies were getting crowded over urban spaces. New technology and increased flying really required new safety regulations. But then it happened. Two major commercial flights, one by United Airlines and the other by Trans World Airlines, collided over the remote Grand Canyon. There were no actual witnesses to the crash. All 128 people, passengers and crew on both flights, were killed. It was a record aircraft disaster. No black box, no flight data recorder, no cockpit recordings. They say a few pieces from the airplanes remain in the bottom of the canyon to this day. The crash resulted in major air traffic control and other aviation reforms that are in effect today. Now let's take a look at the size of the canyon. It's about 450 kilometers in total length. Although the size of the canyon varies during this distance, on average, the Grand Canyon is about 16 kilometers wide. On average, the depth of the canyon is about 1.6 kilometers deep, and that is pretty deep. That would be, I guess in the old, outdated British system of measurement, that would be about 1 mile deep. Whichever way you want to measure it, it is a long way to fall, and the few that do not survive. So be careful and stay back from the potentially dangerous edges of the canyon and just enjoy the view several steps back. There are a number of interpretive signs at the various viewpoints telling you about the geology of the canyon, the history of the canyon, and all within behind nice, safe barriers. There are protective barriers here on all the good viewpoints, but you are seeing the same basic panoramic view. Let's just do another sketch. That's a bit of snowfall. We've seen that before. Let's do another panorama of the canyon. I just couldn't get enough of it when I was there. That is the Colorado River in the distance. Somewhere down in the canyon, along the river, there's a tourist stopping place called the Phantom Ranch. Never a working cattle ranch. It was built to accommodate tourists. There are campsites and cabins and even dormitories for overnight stays. You can often arrange for lunches and meals down at the Phantom Ranch. There are several ways you can get down to the bottom of the canyon. One way, of course, is to hike down and hike back up, but take water and plan for a day, some of which might be with very hot temperatures. But I met a young couple one time. They left in the mid-afternoon, late afternoon, and they hiked down and back up again sometime before midnight. If you were to decide to do that kind of thing, you better be prepared and some experience and know what you're doing. Another way to get down to the bottom is to fly down by a helicopter. Chartered and commercial helicopter flights are quite common on most days. This is an old photograph of some mules pulling some gold or copper out of the bottom of the canyon, and they were commonly used. And today it is common for tourists to take a mule ride down into the canyon. Now, it's not a bad thing because you know what the rule is. Going down or up doesn't matter. Mules go to the inside of the trail. Hikers walk on the outside near the cliff. Nobody wants a mule getting spooked or scared and doing a jump. They head for the inside, so if you're on one, you might be safer than somebody walking on the outer rim of the trail. There's one more thing about riding those mules down into the bottom of the canyon and back. Do you know statistically, there's no record of a mule ever having fallen off the trail and plunged to the bottom. But of course, that is not the case with the human hikers. They have fallen off. It's just another example where animals often are smarter and more capable than humans. You know, I was at the Grand Canyon one time, and my wife and I decided that it would be nice to ride those mules down to the bottom of the canyon. So we made the arrangement, and we'd take the mules the next morning. So after supper, we walked around, and I said, let's go down to the corral there and look at those animals. Well, my wife thought that we would be riding little donkeys or burros. So when she saw those mules in the corral, I don't know if you've ever seen a mule or been up against a mule. They are tall, long-legged hombres. You might be able to even walk with a little bit of stooping right underneath their belly. And my wife looked at those tall giraffe-looking animals and said, you know, there's no way I'm climbing up onto that high thing and riding down a trail into the Grand Canyon. So that was the end of our mule ride. There was another time we decided to walk down, and we started to walk down, zigzagging down the trail, and we decided, you know, maybe we will not do that. But, you know, don't let that deter you. There's a lot of people go to the Grand Canyon, and they ride down, and they fly down, and they hike down, and they have a good time. Just arrange it with the people in charge, and be careful, be safe, and you can have a really good time. Indigenous people have lived in the Grand Canyon area for a long time. So let's take a look at some of these groups yesterday and today. Here's an overview of the indigenous people who lived around the Grand Canyon area. In prehistoric times, they were called the Sinagua, and they lived about 10,000 years before present in the area. BP is the new way, apparently, of measuring time before the present. 10,000 years. We no longer use so much the old terms of BC, before Christ, or AD, which really means after the birth of Christ. But we've moved to the BP designation, before the present, and earliest people lived 10,000 and more, longer years in the area. And their descendants are here today. The Havasupai are the only indigenous modern people today who live below the level of the rim. They live down in the canyon. The Hulape are the folks who run the skywalk and do take a walk out on the skywalk. It's a great experience. And the Navajo and the Hopi people are over on the eastern or upstream side of the canyon, and also in northeastern Arizona. We're at the Viewpoint at the visitor center, where most people really come to, and you can see that they're talkative and excited about what they're seeing. As we watch them here at the Viewpoint, I can tell you that there's no taking of rocks as souvenirs. You buy your souvenirs in the store. No drones allowed in the national park. There's a concern about quiet air technology. Too much noise from helicopters and that in the canyon, and the park wants to control that, as many people would like to see that done. And I don't believe there's any private flights below the rim of the canyon. Before we wrap up this travelogue, let me ask you a question and you give me the answer. Here's the question. Which is the animal that attacks and sends more tourists for medical aid than any other animal? You tell me, and let's take a look at this list. Pick your number. Is it number 1, the bear? Or is it number 2, an elk? Kind of a big deer animal. Number 3, is it the mountain lion? Ferocious. Number 4, is it the rattlesnake? Number 5, is it the squirrel? And number 6, is it the wolf? Here's a quick look at the animals. This is the bear. And this is the elk. Is it the mountain lion? You decide. Rattlesnake. The squirrel, black squirrel, the brown in the park here. The wolf. Which is it? Here's the list again. Quick. What one is the biggest attack on tourists? Yes, it is number 5, the squirrel. Everybody loves to feed the little cute squirrels and bite. They get too close. People like to take a selfie with the squirrel, get too close, and bite. On a busy tourist weekend in the summertime, as many as 30 people will come into the first aid shop to get help after being bitten by these squirrels. There are about 6 million visitors annually, so a small number of bites and even a small number of deaths of about a dozen per year might be expected. Only about 2 or 3 people per year annually fall to their death, mainly from trying to get too close to the edge for a photograph. Dinosaur remains have not been found in the canyon. Water flow out of the canyon for thousands of years has left many vacant spaces, and there is an estimated 1,000 caves in the canyon, but visitors are allowed in only one of them. The park would have a nightmare if caves were open for the public to explore. There would be just too many people getting lost and injured for the park to handle. This is a walkway along the rim, and a quick couple of last pictures of the Grand Canyon. Truly a very great place. This was really a good trip, not just because of the Grand Canyon at the end, but we saw a lot of interesting and great places on the way up here. So don't forget to get off the interstate once in a while. Hit the back roads and you'll find some interesting things. So if you liked what you saw here, we'll try to bring you some more videos. If you subscribe, that tells you when the next video will come up on the internet. And we've got several more planned down the road. So join us then. Hit the subscribe button and we'll see you. Adios for now. This is I Go Travel with Don Barnett.